All right, everybody, welcome to the RotoWire Fantasy Football Live Show. We're on 5 days a week, 11 a.m., off on Wednesdays and Thursdays. And remember, you won't want to miss any show, but the Sunday show, the start, sit, stream, I give you the why so you can make your best lineup decision. And if you have Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Channel, today, Saturday, 1 to 3, I'm on with Mario Puig. Sunday, 9 to 10 a.m. Eastern, on with Alan Soslowski. If it's a little before the time you wake up, you can always rewind that one on the Sirius XM app if you have that. So excited to bring John Ryan in. Before I intro John, last week, John told people how they could get, I believe it was a 10-unit bet, but John will correct me on that, but it was a college football bet. And I did hit John up for that. I think all you had to do last week was message John, and he would have given you that pick. He said he wanted Florida, and I don't even remember who the hell they played. I don't follow college football.
Tennessee.
And Florida was an underdog. I think 5.5 points. John said they probably went outright. Oh my gosh, easiest money ever. They won easily. I can talk about a no sweat one right there. John had a call. They were an underdog getting points. You could have taken a money line even and been fine, but I wasn't greedy. I just took the points. Anyway, let me introduce John. He'll tell you a little bit about stuff here. John is with both RotoWire and the Predictive Playbook Sports Channel. He covers RotoWire college football, RotoWire NFL. John's almost 3 decades as a professional sports bettor. Now, the last 4 years, those 10-unit bets, remember, he gave it that winner last week, 55 and 26. It's 68% on those. And just NFL and NCAA football alone, last 3 years, 65%. John is absolutely the top gambler you'll find. Those numbers are documented. There's no BS with him. You know, when you're looking up his stuff, it's there. So John is your go-to, and you'll follow him at John Ryan Sports 1. You see it right underneath him on the picture. John, tell everybody what's going on.
Thanks for that intro, Jim. And, while I'm at it, you're my GOAT for DFS. So, anybody that's listening to this, you're a fool if you don't listen to his recommendations. He came through big again last week, and I can't remember the last week he didn't give out at least half of the players doing exactly what he said they were going to do. It's really amazing. It's like he has a crystal ball, and that is something I don't have. So this is, keep in mind too, 68% is really pretty high, and we're seeing the card pretty well here. So when I put out these 10-unit plays sometimes, Jim, I actually tell people, remember, they lose 32% of the time.
Right.
I don't know if today's 10-unit play is going to win or not, but it's another one similar in strength and quality, and research will support it as the Florida game. So one more chance. If you want to get that pick, just hit a DM over at John Ryan Sports, #1, and I'll give it to you free today to take a test drive and see for yourself.
Yeah, that's fabulous stuff, John. Remember, give John a follow. John Rubright's in the house. Welcome, John. Good to see you. So, John, your first game, we're going to talk about Dallas at Arizona. Now, I'll always go with the injury stuff. Dallas lost. This game, not a big deal, but they lost Trevon Diggs to an ACL in practice. How horrible for their long season vision. Hopefully they can overcome that. But when they play the heavy hitters in the playoffs, that's going to be a problem right now, not a problem. Arizona, big injury for them. They're very talent deficient, but their great safety, Budda Baker, is going to miss this one. John, what are your predictions in handicapping the Dallas-Arizona game?
Well, Arizona's coming off the unbelievable collapse. And I'll be honest with you, Jim, I had the Giants in all my Circa eliminators, the Westgate eliminator, Draftkings eliminator, and I thought I was dust. I only had one other entry that did not have the Giants.
Wow.
So I was really beating myself up. But then all of a sudden they come back. So right away, as you know how I think, I go into the database and how do teams respond after collapsing and losing a game at home like that magnitude? So what this is leading me to is an overbet. And with the injuries on Dallas, I think we're going to see over time the really superior depth that this unit has compared to other NFL defensive units. And it may not show up in this one because they have to develop some chemistry, but you're going to bet on teams that blew a 17 or more point lead and lost the game, and bet the over. You're going to bet that team is now priced as a home dog. So with this situation, Dallas is on the road against the Cardinals as a prohibitive favorite. I don't really like the -12.5 or wherever the heck it is now.
Right.
But I do like the over because the over in that situation is 21 and I'm sorry, it is 21-7 over for 75% over the last 20 seasons, 11-3 over 79% the last 10 seasons. So it goes to show you too that these are monumental losses, but they have happened before. And the history shows that, these teams just don't show up. And then Dallas takes out their starters in the fourth quarter, perhaps, and Arizona gets a couple cheap shots into the end zone to make the score go over the total quite easily. So that's how I see it, Jim.
I love that one. Now I want to welcome in Willie B36, John B, and Charlene. Welcome all. Very happy that you're here. Again, I saw John was here earlier. Now, John Ryan, you just gave us the over on the Dallas and Arizona game. So last week, and I've been thinking about this a lot lately. So last week, the Giants, like you mentioned, they were getting blown out by an inferior opponent. And what I always think is this: when a team gets a big lead in the game, we talked about this on a previous show, there's a subliminal thing in the back of your mind that tells you won the game. Consciously you haven't. Your coaches are telling you they're dangerous, but you're up 20-something points. And so your mind just stops, and you can't turn that switch back on. And I really felt like the Giants were desperate for a win. So if the team that falls behind is the better team going in-game betting, John, they're going to be getting a very big number of points. Is this a strategy that I could bank on if I'm gambling? Take the better team that falls behind by double digits, 14 or more, let's say. Am I smart in taking the points in-game betting?
Yes, you are. Especially if the dog, a home dog, gets out to like a 10-0 lead, which is somewhat rare, but it does happen. 32 games last year had both teams with 7 or more point leads. Kansas City led that category last year. So it's highly volatile now in the NFL. There's big swings both directions. Rarely do we see a game other than Monday night where the favorite goes out and takes the lead and just doesn't give it up. And that was the win over the Giants. Those will happen, but it's very rare that a dog will get out to a lead and just keep the lead for the whole game. The favorite will respond.
I think John froze up there. I'll wait till we hear him back in. But we'll move to the DFS plays. And knowing John unfreezes will be good. So DFS. Now, the last 2 weeks, look, sometimes we're lucky, sometimes we're good, but the process there. John, you froze up. I think you're still frozen. Are you there?
Yeah, we're here in the East Coast, and we have that cyclone going on. And I think we just got knocked out, but it's back on now.
Yeah, so I'm moving to the DFS. You made a great point about the in-game betting, and then hopefully you're safe and you keep on line, and we'll just kind of work with that. So DFS, I was saying, the last 2 weeks, I've given you a cheap play. I gave you Baker Mayfield a couple weeks ago. He went for 300 yards and a couple touchdowns, easily, sent you there. Last week, I gave you a cheap one was CJ Stroud, and he went for 384 and a couple touchdowns. So look, we're not going to hit that cheap one every week, and I'll give you a cheap one in a moment. You're going to gag when I say that one, like he did the last 2 weeks, but we'll hopefully get 3 out of 3 here. All right, so look, I know John talked about the tropical cyclone. And so right now, I had Lamar Jackson on my board. I'm going to pull him off of my board. Also, I gave people prop betting. I pulled Lamar Jackson off because there's too many variables. And we'll move on in a moment. But Jared Goff, we said this last week. When Jared Goff is at home, Jared Goff is a beast. And the coaching, Ben Johnson, gets the first read open. Jared Goff just gets to rip. Now, and I know Josh Reynolds, playing with it. I think an oblique he's supposed to play. Amon-Ra St. Brown's dinged up. But I do think check the injury report. As long as St. Brown's playing, Goff is money at home. He was again last week, over 300 yards. And again, I think 3 touchdowns, plays Atlanta this week. Atlanta is improving on defense, but Goff is shown at home. Doesn't matter who he's playing. Look, this next player, he has not looked very good. But 6,100, Deshaun Watson against Tennessee. And here's the thing, they're at home. Tennessee, they have an inside pass rush. They're not a great outside pass rush, but the Cleveland offensive line holds up against that. And the one thing is you can't run on Tennessee. You have to pass. Well, with Nick Chubb gone anyway, and I always pains me to say it because I love Nick Chubb. Anyway, They're going to have to go with a lot of heavy receiver sets. They've been using 3. They might use some 4, and they're going to spread the field, and Tennessee can't stop the pass. They really have no personnel to do that. Watson's going to probably run for 60 yards this game. I said you can't run on Tennessee, but I'm not talking about the mobile quarterback who breaks contain. So Watson at 6,100. I know he hasn't looked good, but he's a really good play. Here's my cheap one for you. Gag it. Andy Dalton, 4,900 at Seattle.
Oh.
All right. So it's bad. I get it. Seattle is down their cornerback, Tariq Woolen. He's listed as doubtful. They have a rookie quarterback, Devon Witherspoon, is still finding his way. And so anyway, when we look at this, Seattle doesn't have a pass rush. That's just a done deal. So the offensive line that's had the talent was good on the tackle part, but they haven't played up to their talent. But Dalton should stay relatively clean against Seattle. Dalton, in nothing else, he'll get the ball. DJ Chark is a really good opportunity for Dalton. He was never going to get it going with Bryce Young, but I think Andy Dalton is right now is better for them to win games. I think Andy Dalton gets you about 220 and 2 touchdowns, but at 4,900, I think that cashes for you. All right, and I'll give you some running backs before I get to John. Go ahead. Do you have something to add?
Oh, no, I'm just impressed with the idea, because a lot of times, even with the games, there's times where the analytics will tell me to be all over an ugly dog with fleas, and you almost feel embarrassed betting them. And that Andy Dalton is one of them, but you provided the substance that makes it all make sense. 4,900, what'd you say, 222 touchdowns? I mean, that's a lot of points for 4,900.
Yeah, and that gets you there. And like I said, I know who Andy Dalton is, and I've known to stay away, but I've known there's weeks to play him. And with Tariq Woolen out, I think this is a week where we can play him, because that game could shoot out. Look, the sacks don't hurt us in DFS. So Uncle Ted's in the house. Joe Mosca's in the house. Good to see everybody. A few running backs before we get you John with a second pick. I try not to give you the layup picks, but we got to get some. Bijan Robinson's playing Detroit. And here's the thing I like best about it. Arthur Smith is really good at identifying a weakness of defense, especially when he's using his running backs. And the linebacker position there, it can be had in the pass game. And Bijan Robinson's already shown us he's special as a receiver and a runner, of course. But as a receiver, he's been getting targets as well. This is a game where I think Bijan Robinson is very, very heavily used as a runner and a receiver. And I think this is a great opportunity for him. And again, they really can make the mark out of Detroit. And overall, that Atlanta, like we talked about that offensive line and the extra blockers they put in, they just put him in optimal circumstance. Detroit's not going to be able to handle that. James Cook, 6,400 at Washington. We talked about him the first week against the Jets. He was okay, but it was the Jets. And then we said last week, fire up James Cook against the Raiders. And his total yards are over $150. He doesn't score touchdowns, but he gets work around the 10. When they get inside the 5, it's about the other backs. But at 6,400, remember, tropical cyclone could impact that game. So I think that's better for Cook. Cook might see more work. Raheem Mostert, 6,000 against Denver. Miami's clearly using him. I didn't think they'd use him that much. Denver cannot stop the run, and they're playing in that Miami heat. Denver's coming from the thin air. And they're really crippled on defense. They're down both safeties. They have injuries, a linebacker injury. They are decimated. They have no depth. And in that heat, they're going to wilt. And then Joshua Kelly, we faded him last week. We faded him hard. We come back this week, 5,400 at Minnesota. No Austin Eckler again. Minnesota, what we've seen from them is they're dropping a lot of bodies in coverage. Brian Flores he runs the defense, and he's blitzing a lot. Well, what's going to happen is the middle of the field is open. So once you get through the line, and the offensive line and with the Chargers are very good, Kelly's going to get to that second level. They're going to take what Minnesota gives them. Kelly probably gets you 100 yards here. Last one. Gus Edwards, 5,300 against Indianapolis. We don't like running against Indianapolis interior. That is not a recipe for success, but this was only if you're looking to save money tournament only. Justice Hill is out. Melvin Gordon off the practice squad. Kenyon Drake off the practice squad. I think Edwards, because of those guys not being like part of the full mix, Edwards could get you 15 touches. He could fall in the end zone twice. He's a really good runner, and he has Lamar Jackson to kind of tilt defenses. So look for those. Are some possible DFS plays. John Ryan, we are back to you. We are talking about your next pick. So Sunday Night Football. Steelers played on Monday night, And they had that short week. They travel all the way across the country for this one. Raiders got pasted last week by the Bills, but of course that's to be expected. What do you like in this game?
Well, I think the way Tomlin has run the Steelers year after year after year, and he's one of the most underrated, great all-time coaches ever. I put him up there with Belichick and the other legends, and he just doesn't get the credit from the media. And perhaps it's a small market in Pittsburgh, but he knows how to coach, period. And he is a very good game coach. So what do the Steelers do after a horrid loss? They play defense. What are they known for in the franchise? What's the first word that pops in your head when you mention the Pittsburgh Steelers? It's defense, at least in my opinion.
Always.
But I think in this game with a total of 43 right now, was 44.5 a couple weeks ago. So it makes sense. And I think actually this game will stay under 40, Jim. Both teams cannot afford to get behind early by 2 scores, perhaps. So there again, if you like, hypothetical, like you mentioned, if you like the Steelers at minus or plus 2.5 here on the road, and Vegas gets out to a 10-point lead during the first half, that's going to give you a golden opportunity to get Pittsburgh if that's the team you think is better. There's no question about it. So keep that in mind. But with this total here, it's supported by a pretty darn good betting system of mine. We're going to bet the under. The home team is favored. The home team. Now, this is an interesting parameter that I haven't presented, but it gives you a little sample of the depth of the parameters that I use to come up with these algorithms. So the home team had quarterback pressures on less than 15% of the plays in each of the past 2 games. That's kind of self-explanatory. So that situation, 15-8 straight up for the home team. There's 10-13 against the spread, but 16-7 under for 67% winners just in the last 5 seasons alone. So here again, live in-game betting. Your total is 43. You're not forced to bet up your $100 bet if that's what you bet pre-flop. Why not consider doing $70 pre-flop? Keep that $30 in hand for the in-game, and then when the total does get up to 47.5, you have the money to put it down, and you're not over betting. That's the whole key. On my shows, I always end it, bet with your head, not over it, and it's so important that you really realize that, because gambling is supposed to be fun. And a lot of times it ends up not being for a lot of people because they lose and then they try to win it back. And don't ever try to win it back on the same day. Believe me, I'm going to have, Jim's sang out the kudos for me. Yeah, I'm reading the card pretty well right now, but I guarantee you I will go 0-3 one of these NFL Sundays, hopefully not in the contest 0-5, but it's going to happen. But over time, you keep grinding these out, and I think you'll be profitable.
Yeah, John, I think what I like is even better than the picks you make, which are always top of the line. It's the teaching. You teach us how to be better gamblers, smarter gamblers. Teach us about bankroll, live in-game betting. There are so many different nuances. Yeah, there are a lot of people that can give good picks. You are among the best at that. But I think to provide that education, I think that helps, because a lot of us, look, you've been a professional gambler. That's wisdom that a lot of us don't have. So appreciate that, John Ryan. We'll come back to you for one more. I'm going to do a few more DFS. So wide receivers. So you've heard me the first 2 weeks. I went to Mike Williams. First week, he missed a quarter of the game, got hurt. Last week, he was okay. Not terrible. But this week, we are going to go to Keenan Allen at the advanced price of $7,600. I mentioned earlier that Brian Flores, we learned this in that Philadelphia game last week. They're dropping a bunch of people deep in coverage. They don't want to get beat by big plays. They're going to blitz a lot. Now, they are without Marcus Davenport, one of their edge rushers. That's going to hurt them in this game. And the thing is, I mentioned earlier, Chargers have a really good offensive line. And so what's going to happen is the underneath was going to be open all night long. Well, that's where Keenan Allen lives. So even 7,600, Keenan Allen could have a massive, massive game, because that's exactly what Minnesota will give them. Minnesota knows they don't have talent on defense. They have some players, but they don't have enough in the secondary. So they have to smoke and mirror it up. So they want to take a chance that you need to run a 15-play drive, hoping you make a mistake. And Keenan Allen is going to be peppered with targets here. look, Calvin Ridley's been horrible his last 3 halves of play. He dropped or misplayed 2 possible touchdowns into Kansas City. He ran into the goalpost on one of them, stepped on the end line on another. But this week he's playing Houston. Now, Houston's usually an amazing defense against the pass. And it's like, how? Well, this week, they're without their safety, Jalen Petrie. They're without 2 of their top corners, Tavier Thomas and Derek Stingley. They are decimated right now. And Trevor Lawrence, after that egg on his home field that he laid against the Chiefs, and they, look, it was an egg from terms they didn't score a touchdown. They are at home. They are coming back here. Florida Heat, that's their home. Houston, again, they're without depth. They're going to wilt under that heat, especially without the depth. Ridley gets back going here in a big way because of primarily the injuries against Houston. Otherwise, if the injuries weren't there, we wouldn't like Ridley because Houston plays really well. Amari Cooper, 5,700. He's cheap against Tennessee. Remember, he had his bigger game on Monday night, so he was priced on Sunday. So he would have been priced higher than this. We said earlier, Tennessee can't cover the pass. You can't run against them. And Cooper, we saw last week, he is the alpha on that offense. Look, DJ Moore, we went to him last week. We're going back to him, 5,700 at Kansas City. Kansas City's a great defense right now. I understand that. But I believe I think Justin Fields was ticked off at the coaching staff because basically they're teaching him to look for stuff when there are guys open. He's saying, all right, no, I'm not supposed to do them. He's like, he almost said, screw it. I see an open guy, I'm throwing it to him. And I think he's going to how a pitcher will shake off the catcher? I think Justin Fields is at that point. And DJ Moore is always open. He'll get into the middle of the field often. Kansas City has very good corners, L'Jarius Sneed and Trent McDuffie. But DJ Moore's a superstar. And we saw it last week. He's going to get more targets. Zay Flowers, 5,400 against Indianapolis. We talk about the tropical cyclone. Well, Zay Flowers catches a ton of screen passes. He is the player that is not going to be heavily impacted by that. He's still going to get the short passes, and the defense is to deal with Mark Andrews, and so that's going to help stretch things out. But the mobility of Lamar too. So Flowers is still in play. We don't like Jackson because of weather. Flowers is fine. Nico Collins, 5,300 at Jacksonville. We expect Ridley and Lawrence to put up points. Nico Collins is a alpha receiver. We see him running those alpha routes, those in breakers, and CJ Stroud just keeps going to him. Big chunks of yardage. Jacksonville, Tyson Campbell at corner is very good, but Nico Collins is playing at a level we expected. Couple quick ones. If you're taking Jared Goff, try to stack him with Josh Reynolds against Atlanta. He's 4,200. They have a very good rapport. They seem to come through almost every week. Defenses are focused on St. Brown in the middle of the field, Reynolds. And if you're going to take that crazy Andy Dalton one at 4,900, then you got to put him with DJ Chark at 3,800 because DJ Chark, it wasn't going to be a big factor with Bryce Young, but he's the downfield guy, and Dalton can get – I know he doesn't have the powerful arm, but he will get it to his alpha, and that's his alpha right now. So if you hold your nose, gag, and take the Dalton Chark plunge, then you'll have plenty of money to spend everywhere else. Tight ends. Cole Kmet, 4,300 at Kansas City. Kansas City should have a massive lead. Kmet is the only big presence body in the middle of the field. So if that game's going to shoot out, maybe get Mahomes in there, but get Kmet and DJ Moore. If the Bears can put up their side of the bargain, which they've been horrible so far, they're going to have to pass the ball. Sam Laporta, 4,000 at Atlanta. If that game shoots out, you want some action there. Jake Ferguson, 3,600 at Arizona. He had Uncle Ted just mentioned Jake Ferguson. Jake Ferguson could have had a second touchdown last week. Dak just missed him on a pass. He's getting targeted. He's getting red zone targets. Finally, saving money. Cole Turner of Washington, 2,700 against Buffalo. Logan Thomas is out with a concussion. Logan Thomas gets 8 targets in the opener. Logan Thomas gets 4 targets, and he gets concussed in the game. Cole Turner got 5 targets. The tight end position is getting 8 targets a game, and I know Matt Milano is a great coverage guy, but I don't think they're selling him out to stop Cole Turner. I don't think that's the case. I think they would be more worried about maybe getting him on Curtis Samuel in the middle of the field. So Cole Turner at 2,700 should cash. Finally, a couple defenses. All right, Josh Allen could have a great game. Josh Allen could have a game where he's going YOLO. The Commanders' pass rush is for real. Those front 4, insane. If you want to just punt the position, it's 2,400. You hope to get 8 points out of them, but Josh Allen will make mistakes. So you could get picks here. You might not get anything, but it's 2,400. The Jets, 2,800 against New England. Everybody will talk about New England's defense against Zach Wilson, and it's true. But the money you got to pay for New England's through the roof. Go back with the Jets, because remember, New England is pretty talent deficient on offense, and the Jets in this divisional game, they're going to bring it. John Ryan, I know you got one more pick for us. So we talked during the DFS about some of the injuries the Houston Texans have in their secondary. We talked about Jacksonville at home. We talked about them coming off that big loss. Regardless, how do you handicap Houston-Jacksonville here?
Well, it's kind of tough because on my models for the Eliminator, Jacksonville came screaming at me. So we're talking money line here. It's not a play that you would bet because the money line's too high. But I have to admit, I'm not sold on going and signing up for Jacksonville and money line. The key with these Eliminator contests, and a lot of people, maybe a lot of them were first-time entries, I suspect, used the 49ers. Well, that won. Okay, so that's good. The problem is that you got to save those 49ers, Eagles, Dallas, Kansas City for down the road. You have to be willing to roll the dice a little bit with a team like Jacksonville, and this might be the best shot they have for you to use on an Eliminator contest, because their schedule is not going to get any easier as we get through the season. So with that said, my analytics show that Jacksonville will win, but it's not going to be by double digits. And the last thing I need is to have another Giants pick in my Eliminator and sit there and watch the comeback and hope to God that it happens. So, with that said, the algorithm here is, and this is a contrarian bet, and there's no doubt about it, but the Texans getting 9 points is a little bit much. Maybe it's 9.5 now in the markets. If it goes higher, that's even better. So the requirements for this thing is to bet on road underdogs 3.5 to 9.5 points that are averaging 28 or more points per game on the season. Pretty simple to remember. That set of parameters posted a 42-76 straight up record. Not so good, but remember, you're betting the money line, which at 9.5 is going to be closing in on plus 400. And that's not bad when you win 42 out of 76 record. That probably generates a little bit of money for you. But the profitable situation is 77-39 against the spread. That's 66.4%, taking an ugly dog that kind of resembles Andy Dalton in many ways. But, that's why we do these things, because we find the value. And if you do this over time, you take enough Andy Daltons in that DraftKings lineup each week, it's going to pay off. And that's what's so exciting about Jim's work. And, I love finding these ugly dogs that have fleas. There's no question about it. So drilling further into the data, adding a situation that our dog has had gotten 26 or more quarterback pressures in all plays run against their opponent's offense in that previous game. So that improves the record to 8-12 straight up for the Texans. Much, much better. 13-6-1, that's 68%, and that's going back to 2015. So I have a lean towards Houston in this game against the spread pre-flop, and I probably will go with Jacksonville with my Eliminator. It's still yet to be determined, but I don't see any other option available for me that makes sense.
John, and as I look at the injury front too, Houston, they've done fine. They're still down 3 of their starting offensive linemen. Laramie Tunsil might play. He was the 4th one who was out last week, but he's not 100%. And we talked about earlier, the Jacksonville Heat. Houston's going out, and it's going to be very humid. It always is this time of year. And we said they're missing 3 of their top 5 secondary players, 2 corners and a safety. At some point, you run out of bodies. And Jacksonville's a very good team. And they're coming off a very, very bad loss. And so they have every reason to cover. Now, John Rubright said he took Seattle in a suicide pool. Hope he didn't overthink it. Hey, John, even though we said Andy Dalton and DJ Chark for dart throw DFS tournament plays are nice, Seattle is in a great spot here. Carolina's coming off a short week. They're traveling. I'm not full across the country, but close to it. And so there's a lot of variables in Seattle. And Seattle, again, has that great home field advantage. So I don't think you overthought it at all. I do think Seattle, but I love John Ryan's call here because he mentioned Jacksonville's schedule down the road. But Seattle's kind of in the same boat. the Seattle, there's going to be a lot of weeks. It's going to be hard to
Sure.
go with them, take them. So, yeah, Jacksonville's a great play, but I don't think you overthought Seattle. John, tell everybody where they can find you and your work and how to get it maybe a high-value play for today as well.
Well, I will give out another 10-unit play. They do pretty well. They do lose 32% of the time. But seriously, if you want to get a test drive of the analytics, most importantly, and the educational stuff I try to provide every day, then just send me a direct message on Twitter at John Ryan Sports 1. Send me an email at johnryansports@gmail.com, or visit thepredictiveplaybook.com, and you'll be able to get me there as well. So I hope to hear from all of you, and hopefully this 10-unit will cash again today.
And like I told you, John gave us Florida last week. They were an underdog 5.5 points to Tennessee. They won comfortably. It was never in question. About a no sweat bet. That was a beautiful one. If I was greedy, I would have taken the money line when John said they could win it outright. But I played it and just took the points. And you know what? It was happy to cash. And I actually had a 50% profit boost, John, on DraftKings for that game. Any bet on that game. So I had additional money. Thank you, John Ryan. I'd like to thank John for joining us today. He'll be on the show every Saturday of the season. Tomorrow, Sunday, the Start Sit live stream, 11 a.m. Eastern. Now, next week, we're going to be starting those London games. I might be doing the Start Sit later Saturday afternoons. We'll talk about that later. Anyway, everybody, thanks to John Ryan. Thanks to you, everybody. Have a great day. Happy week 3, and we will talk soon.